Hey guys, new lesson again today. Today we're learning about solving proportions using cross products. So we've already done some work with solving proportions, so we know how to set them up and how to cross multiply and divide to get answers. A couple other things that we're doing today. So first of all, remember a proportion is two ratios that are being said equal to each other. So again, I'm going to write this down. We're talking about two ratios. Okay. One thing that's going to happen today is that they're going to give us two ratios, such as 3/5 and 6/10. And they might not necessarily say that those two things are equal to each other. They just might separate it from a comma. They're just going to list the two of them. And one thing that they might ask us to do is just to prove if these actually can form a proportion or not. And one thing that we know that's going to be true always is that when we multiply the cross products, that they should be equal to each other. And what cross products mean is if I take the denominator from one times the numerator of the other, that should be equal to if I take the numerator from one times the denominator of the other, if I do those two things. So if I do that, if I do 3 times 10, I get 30. And the other multiplication, the other diagonals, the 5 times 6, well, look at that, I also get 30. And that's what we're talking about today, is that if something really is equal to each other, two ratios are equal, their cross products should be equal to each other. All right. So because I know that their cross products both equal 30, what I can say is that indeed 3/5 does equal 6/10. Okay. So by multiplying those cross products, that's one way to prove that ratios are equal to each other. It's one way to prove that for sure they can form a proportion. Okay, so here's example one. I'm going to let you go ahead and try both of these right away. So it says tell whether the ratios form a proportion. So your final answer is going to be yes or no, but I do expect to see the work involved showing me that you prove that yes they are or no they're not. So go ahead and pause the video and try it on your own. Okay, we're back. So if I want to prove if these things form a proportion or not, we're going to do what we just talked about on the other page, which is multiply their cross products. So for part A here, I'm going to go here and do 51 times 6, and that equals 306. Okay, that should be the same thing if I multiply the other diagonal, the 9 times 34. And so I do 9 times 34. And absolutely, that does equal 336. So because these two things are the same, that means that, yes, these two things, 9 over 51 and 6 over 34, they do form a proportion. Absolutely. Okay? Next problem. Okay, part B you should have done also. Again, we're going to multiply the cross products, so we're going to do 20 times 32, which is going to give me 640. Okay, and then I do 12 times 50, which is going to give me 600. Okay, so in this case, they are not the same. And because they're not the same, that means that these two ratios are not equal to each other, so my final answer is no. So as I said before, our final answer are yes or no answers. But I do want to see some sort of, probably see this number here. If you tell me what the cross products actually equal, that's going to be proof enough for me that you multiply the cross products and either yes, they did end up being the same, or no, they didn't. Okay. All right, here's another one for you guys to try here. So human hair, it says example 2, human hair grows about 0.7 centimeter in 2 weeks. How long does it take to grow 14 centimeters? Okay, so I want you to set up a proportion and solve it, trying to solve that answer. So pause the video. Okay, you're back. So if we're going to set up a proportion to do this here, well, I know, okay, I get my equal sign and I get my two ratios on each side. In the problem, I always look to start by trying to find a ratio that they give me. So sentence number 1 does that for me. It says human hair grows about 0.7 centimeters in 2 weeks. So that says one ratio is 0.7 centimeters in 2 weeks. Okay? Now, one thing I know about setting up proportions is that if centimeters is on top here, centimeters is going to go on top over here. If weeks is on bottom in this one, then weeks is going to go on bottom over here. Okay, makes it a nice, easy setup. Now, I have two open spaces. Okay, my second ratio, I need to know one more number before I can solve for the fourth missing one. So the second sentence here says, how long does it take 14 centimeters? Well, think about where the 14 would go. They're saying 14 centimeters. Well, since I already said centimeters are on top, That means that the 14 has to go here. And we're looking for, well, how many weeks is it going to take? Well, that's going to be my variable, which I'll call x. So there's my proportion. Okay, we're going to cross multiply. 2 times 14 is 28. 28 divided by 0.7 is going to tell me that it takes, that answer is 40. So it takes 40 weeks for hair to grow 14 centimeters. Okay? Okay, last problem of the day here. All right, again, we've done a couple of these like these before. Let's see if you remember how to do them. Solve each proportion. So remember, I'm not necessarily trying to find, my answer isn't what that entire denominator is. I'm looking for specifically what does x have to be. Okay, so pause the video and give those a try. Okay, you're back. So what we learned about is to cross multiply and divide. So if I treat this right here as my unknown, if I don't know what that is, let's just try to find out what that denominator has to end up equaling. Okay, so if I go ahead and do the other three numbers, cross multiply and divide, I can do 39 times 7 and then divide that by 21, and that gives me an answer of 13. So that tells me that this part right here has to end up equaling 13. Has to. So if I want to write down the algebra, then that tells me that that x plus 7 that's in parentheses, it had better be 13. So I'm just going to set it equal to 13, and then I can solve it and figure out that x has to be 6. And that should make sense, because when I plug 6 back in place of x, I know that denominator then is 6 plus 7, which does make that denominator 13 then, which is what we said all along it should be. Okay, part B here, okay, x minus 8 is in the parentheses, so that is going to be my unknown. That's what I'm trying to figure out what it is. Okay, so the other three numbers I'm going to cross multiply and divide. So let's do 28 times 20, which gives me 560. That 560 divided by 16 gives me that this numerator should be 35 when I do that. Okay, so I want to know what number minus 8 equals 35. Well, let's go ahead and show that work. I know that x minus 8 has to end up equaling 35. So I can write an equation and solve that equation by adding 8 to each side. And that tells me that x has to be 43. Okay? Because if I plug that in for x right here, 43 minus 8, that's what makes that numerator 35, which is what it had to be. Okay, if you have questions, ask me. Other than that, that's the end of our lesson.